Good day, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. Really appreciate you tuning in and listening to me and Sandy, and always have a great guest on. And speaking of Sandy, he's here with us again today.
Hey, how you doing, Rob?
Very good. How are you?
Fantastic. And could be better. New year, and excited to officially hit our 9-year thing here. I think this month we're officially 9 years. So
yeah, you know what? You're right. By the time this comes out, it'll be past 9 years. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's wild.
I'm calling this the year of prosperity. That's what my wife and I have decided.
I like that.
Yeah, 2023, the year of prosperity. There we go.
Well, I didn't have a word, but if I was gonna make one on the spot here, I'm gonna go with simplicity. That's my word.
Yeah.
You can have prosperity. You can have prosperity. You can have prosperity through simplicity. I think that's
very, very good.
Yeah.
Well, I've had no choice here but to live that way, because my house is probably, I don't know, a third of the size of my house that we moved from. So we've had to really declutter and get rid of a lot of stuff. So simple in that way anyways.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. What else is new?
What else is new? Well, I mean, simplicity. I'm trying to make less new things happen. That's what's new. I've been spending the holiday break kind of reflecting on past year and stuff, and just looking at things that have been maybe taking away energy from me and not adding it. And I've been really focused on rather than anything new happening, I'm focusing on getting rid of things that were new in the last while, and just trying to remove stuff. I moved to a bigger house in the last couple of years, and with that, this is not the main goal of what I'm doing, but you mentioned decluttering, and when you go the opposite way and you move into a larger home, you end up with so much crap. And sometimes that gets you in a habit of getting more crap from other places in life, right? And you just end up with.
Well, I blame Amazon for that too. It's so damn easy, and here we don't. It's very difficult to get Amazon packages delivered, and the duty to bring them in is very significant. It's probably equal to the purchase price, roughly, if you're going to do the math. So we just go, oh well, we gotta wait until somebody comes down, and then ask them to bring the thing you need, only, so you don't bother them too much.
So you end up with a lot less wants in that scenario, which is
exactly
okay. I spent a couple hours yesterday. No, not yesterday. A few days ago, breaking down boxes in my garage. And it's Amazon box after Amazon box that we've had. I've just been tossing them in there for 6 months or something, or a year. Yeah.
So it sounds to me like yours is more the year of no then.
I would say it's more of a no than a yes year. That's for sure. Yeah.
Because I've heard of other people where they go, okay, whatever they don't tell this publicly, obviously, but they decide, okay, whatever somebody throws at me, I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, right.
Right. And some people do that one. But I think that the year of no is just as important sometimes.
Yeah, both have value. Both have value for sure. It's I would definitely be on the no side. Not to discourage any listeners from reaching out to me or wanting to talk to me about anything. It doesn't mean I'm going to say hard no to everything. But just, be a little more thoughtful of how I, what I bring into my world. That's all.
Right. Good stuff. Yeah. And as usual, guys, go over to our website, breakthroughreipodcast.ca. Listen to all the past episodes. Get in touch with all of our past guests. Hopefully they won't say no when you try to reach out to them, and get our free gift.
Yeah, the ultimate strategy for building wealth through real estate. You can pick that up and get on our email list so you never miss out on an episode or an event or a webinar or a property tour. On that note, I forgot to mention something, Rob. We are launching the Vaughan Investors Club here in the next couple of weeks, actually. And so that was one thing I wanted to mention on this show. Probably it'll already have happened, our first event, by the time this airs.
Okay.
But we are a couple partners and I, actually one of our past guests, Martin Kuev, on the show, and I are launching that meetup club in Vaughan, which, looking around and doing some research since COVID, there's just a lot less of those kind of community, small, intimate sort of groups that that popped up. And so, yeah, there's a need for that in the Vaughan area, and we decided to launch that. So we're excited to do that. Our next event would probably be February 15th for those who are listening right as this episode comes out. And yeah, you can pick that up somewhere in my social media world. You'll be able to find it.
I love when you promote. You never know like where to send anybody. You don't know the website or anything? Or
I do know the website, VaughanInvestorsClub.com.
VaughanInvestorsClub.com.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Cool. That's awesome. And everybody listening as well, go over to iTunes, rate and review the show. You know it helps us. Give us 5 stars. Let us know what kind of things you want to hear on upcoming episodes, and maybe guest suggestions, whatever it is that you want to say. Go over there on iTunes and leave us that rating and review. And that's it. Let's get to the show.
Awesome. Let's do it. We got Zach Cahill here standing by. Welcome to the show, Zach.
Thanks for having me, Sandy and Rob. It's a pleasure to be here, and I can't believe it's been 9 years since you guys started the show. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's crazy. Very crazy. Well, Zach, you and your team, you've built up you've helped your investment partners create passive income through strategic real estate investing while providing simple home ownership solutions to families and individuals primarily across Northern Ontario. In that last 5 years, you built out a portfolio. You've got 50 plus rent-to-own projects completed or in progress, 80 plus multifamily units under management. I think you said 60 plus million of assets under management is what that equates to. So you've done a great job in Northern Ontario. Smaller communities. I guess Sudbury's not as small of a community as a lot of others in Northern Ontario, but it's been a while since we've talked to someone in that area, the kind of Northern Ontario. So we're excited to learn a bit about how you've done that in that market and accomplish some of these cool numbers. So welcome again to the show. And
yeah, welcome.
Thanks, guys. Thanks. Just a small hint is it's 16 million. I will let you know when I get to 60 million. Sorry. It shouldn't be that far off, but just for the listeners to clarify. But
that's my Southern Ontario numbers. Trying 80 plus units. I'm like, it made sense. Yeah.
That's funny.
All good. So yeah, why don't you share a little bit more about how you got started in real estate investing?
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. So honestly, when I grew up, I didn't know anything about real estate, finances. I remember having one specific conversation with my dad about a mortgage, and he told me that if your mortgage payment was $1,000, $1 went to principal and $999 went to interest. And after hearing that, it wasn't so attractive. So I kind of went through my life just I really liked excitement. So when I was going through school, it's kind of boring, and I ended up getting into the paramedic field because it was interesting. It was exciting. Got to drive around in an ambulance with the lights on. And when I graduated in 2013, 2014, it was extremely challenging to get a job. I ended up applying pretty well everywhere throughout Ontario. And I had a call from a place called Espanola, Ontario, which turns out is roughly an hour from Sudbury. So I drove up there with my father and pretty well did like a few days of interviews. And lo and behold, I ended up getting a part-time job. So I left my fiance in London because that's where I was from. And I just moved up and stayed in literally like a room in a house, and just thought I was going to come back down in a few months, right? When jobs would open up down south. And lo and behold, within 6 months, I got a full-time job. And there was a catch to that. The catch was it was actually 4 hours north of Sudbury in a town of 100 people. So I literally went from this, really busy life in London to just sitting on my butt in literally like a shoebox of an ambulance base with one paramedic partner. And we would stay there for 5 days and maybe do one ambulance call. So it's safe to say there was a lot of video games being played. And then one day my partner introduced me to Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. My paramedic partner, he had a couple buildings in Timmins, which was not too far from where I was working. And after basically reading that book, really, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, right? It really just flicked a switch in my brain. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? What is this passive income, assets, liabilities? And just dove in at that point in early 2015 and just learning everything I could. hence, listening to your guys' podcast was one of the first that I listened to, along with a few others, and YouTube videos, audiobooks, because I was literally on the road like 4 hours just to get to work. And there was two strategies that really stood out for me. One was, the value add, being able to buy something, increase the rents, increase the value just by doing strategic renovations. And it seemed easy enough at the time. And, that was the route I took for my first property, which I purchased in 2017. It was a 6-unit apartment that we actually added a 7th unit to it. Again, I worked with a real estate agent who was doing exactly what I wanted to do. I think that's really important. When you're getting into it, you want to find someone that's doing what you want to do. So after kind of working with the agent, analyzing lots of different deals, that's the position I took. It took around, honestly, like 8 to 12 months to do the full renovation and the refi. And I was still in Foleyet where I was working, like twiddling my thumbs, like going stir crazy, like, where's the next deal, right? So that's when I kind of went back to the drawing board, and I was like, okay, like, how do I keep growing this portfolio? And at this time, I've had the 7-plex for like a few months now, right? And I've just noticed, like, I'm getting calls, there's maintenance breaks, like this whole passive income story that I kind of was sold, like, wasn't really working out so well at that time. So I was like, I need another strategy, and that's where I really love the rent to own. Not only you're helping someone become a homeowner, but we're also making great passive income, and more importantly, consistent, right? There's not a break in the toilet or, plumbing fix, etc. So I got training from a previous legacy coach who was basically the instructor for Robert Kiyosaki, like teaching the, creative financing. She had like 200 of these houses across Canada. And I was like, again, who better to learn from? Studied with her for over a year, still talk to her this day, and really fine-tuned the rent-own strategy and started that business in 2018, and just been really building both sides of those businesses up. 2020-ish, we kind of ran into a wall of just how to find more deals, because everyone was investing like it's something like buying everything over asking. So we started a wholesaling division to help us find more properties for ourselves, our investors, and also for our tenant buyers. And that's kind of where we're at today. There's been a property management business kind of just created out of the woodworks just to manage everything. And yeah, most of the portfolio is in Sudbury, but we have expanded the rent to own investing to other areas of Ontario and Canada. And yeah, things are going really well. I know that was a pretty long story.
Oh, that was great. Now, what strategies are you focused on now? Are you staying with rent to own? Are you implementing anything else?
Yeah, great question. So right now the focus is rent to own, and it's also helping other investors find off-market properties in Sudbury. That's the focus. My 80-unit portfolio is kind of on hold right now, to be honest, because there's lots of renovations going on in that. Just to give you an idea, like we have almost 10 vacant units. We're also flipping like 3 properties simultaneously right now. So our capacity to take on new projects is kind of at its max, but we don't want to, destroy our pipeline of these deals coming in. So now we're just working with other investors who want to do projects themselves actively, or potentially passive investing in the rental.
So when you started the wholesaling thing, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. In my opinion, it's like one of the keys to real estate is, being able to find a good deal, right? If you're able to really find a good deal, typically the money's going to come, the people are going to come to execute it. So it actually started off because I was running a real estate meetup. Shoot, this would have probably been 2018, 2019. Like a super rookie, just started a real estate meetup group in Sudbury. I was like, I need to meet more people. I ended up meeting 2 of my business partners that, teamed up with me on the wholesaling division. So both of them are located, born and raised in Sudbury. They're the boots on the ground. We have like our lead acquisition specialist, Brett, who's like going to all the properties. And then we have John kind of doing the project management, and then my role in the investor space. So, we hit the one difference for us, like we hit the ground, like the pavement, and actually door knock, a lot of physical advertisement, like none of this virtual wholesaling. Like we see every property in person. And more importantly, 9 times out of 10, we're making cash offers on that property, meaning, if we wouldn't buy it ourselves, why would we sell it to another investor? And that's kind of the philosophy we've had. Even with the market changing the way it did, we got stuck with 5-6 properties that normally would have been wholesaled. But we chose to close on every single deal. And it's just, that's the type of philosophy and the relationship building of the business. And from that, we could have backed out on some deals and left some sellers hang and dry, but we closed on everything. And we're just finishing up the last flip that's going to hit the market later this month, right? And just doing that and just being true to our word we've seen leaps and bounds in terms of referrals from other homeowners and just people that want to work with us, right?
So what was that point where you said you were left with 6 properties you were trying to wholesale? So when did that happen?
Yeah, this was at the top of the year, top of this year. Typically with wholesaling, some of our closings were 3 to 4 months down the road of when we had that initial accepted offer, right? Mm-hmm. And we knew the market was shifting, so we were like the properties we had accepted offers, they were still good deals, but by the time they were closing 4 months later, the spread was wiped out, right? And instead of using like one of our backup clauses and just getting out of the deal and leaving the sellers high and dry, we just closed on it anyway, and we just invested the time, right? Even John and Brett jumping into actual helping the contractors with renovations. One of the codes in our business is just doing whatever it takes, and that's like literally what we did, right? And there was definitely a time owning 5-6 properties, all with high interest financing, right? But we made it happen. A couple of them got flipped to rent to own tenants. A couple of them just got fixed and flipped, and a couple just got sold as is with no work. We just didn't make much money on them, but it was just a matter of putting out the fire, right?
What would you say are some of the big challenges that you've run into so far?
Yeah, so that just the market shift in general. So on a wholesaling front, we went to working with like thousands of investors that we would post deals to, and they would just accept them, to having crickets when we posted deals. So we had that was kind of the challenge, the market, and how we overcame that is we really have just pivoted, right? Instead of trying to work with 1,000 different investors, we've just selected 20, 25 investors that are repeat buyers in Sudbury, and we just funnel them deals. And it's not even about making the biggest spread. It's actually just about relationships, building those relationships, offering the value, offering the deals. So that was a ginormous pivot that we've done, and it just basically got implemented in the last month or so. So when just getting real clear on like who the buyers are in Sudbury, right? And not the buyers like that have the teams to execute the projects, which is another challenge too, right? Because you have all these investors who want to buy deals, but they don't have the teams to execute it. And I was telling Sandy this yesterday, right? Like, there's some examples of investors buying our properties and they're still vacant. They haven't been renovated, right? So we're really getting clear on the people that we're working with on the wholesale front.
Sounds in line with my my word of the year there, I guess. It sounds a lot more simple and easy, and and in often what you're explaining there makes it give a lot of, we see a lot of people, and I've done this in variation, in various ways too, and lots of people we've had on our show or seen at events and whatnot, they talk about all the different growth things they're doing and all this, and people I think I see a lot of people in my world at least seem to be waking up to this more recently. I don't know if you guys are seeing this too, but just see a lot of comments around social media and stuff around, not going just for numbers and all this, and just that business that is focused on a smaller group often, and people that can do business and close and that, just focusing on that relationship versus 10 relationships at once.
Exactly.
10 half-assed versus one, really great relationship and partnership. Like generally those are the best businesses anyways, and run the best and best value for everyone involved. Right.
Yeah. And then we got our real estate meetup group. So what better other way just to have these people out, our buyers out for a meetup group, right? It's actually really just fun, to be honest, if there's one word about it. But, I couldn't agree more about both of your words about, the really making it simple And that's what we've done. And, that was really the biggest challenge with Sudbury home buyers, and, simultaneously with rent, live, own, and like really any rent to own company, part of the exit strategy on that is selling properties for more money back to the tenants, right? And what happens if the house isn't worth that buyback price that you're setting, right? And that was a other huge concern. But the thing about us is anyone really needs to have that, you need to have that vision, that foresight of, the market. Right. So already like a year ago, we were planning on what to do if the market did what it's doing right now. And we came up with a way to continue doing rent to owns, even in a market that's actually depreciating or it's not appreciating. Right. And, we're not going to really go too much in detail on this call, but, we're always adapting, pivoting, like really focused on the mission first. Like, how do we continue setting up these rent to owns in good faith when we're not 100% on what the market's going to be, right? So what happens if insert concern? So that's the kind of route we took, and a lot of legal work, a lot of legal expenses, but I think we've solved that issue to even do rent to owns if the prices don't even appreciate, which is like once you're able to stand by your product like that, it's not even selling. Like we're just here to help more families, and the residual effect of that is passive income.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, finding, having foresight on that. So you're planning, maybe the market wasn't going to, if it didn't act like it is now and it was, all great and going up and up and up, I mean, you wouldn't have to deal with it, but you'd have that backup exit plan and strategy there in case whenever this happens, because the market's going to ebb and flow, obviously, over time, and you're going to end up in this market we're in right now again at some point. So that was inevitable. So kudos to you for doing that. I want to go back really briefly because I was going to ask this earlier and then we got ahead of ourselves here. But there was something in your initial story that was I found interesting. I'm sure there's lots of listeners out there that we have listeners all across the country, and some of them are in remote places. I get emails with people and stuff back and forth from people living in places I've never heard of, northern Alberta, and these places that are small towns and small places. And your story probably resonates with a lot of those folks who are, living somewhere where they don't think real estate investing is really possible. I know Sudbury is quite a bit bigger, but you mentioned living in, I forget what town you said, but 4 hours north or out north in 100 people in a town. And yeah, you found a way to do some deals and make stuff happen. What would be some advice you'd give to someone out there in a similar scenario? That, I mean, your story had a good example there of who you're hanging around with really matters, because your partner in that case was already doing some of this stuff and obviously rubbed off on you. But if someone else is sitting out there and listening to this or listening to something else and they've they're kind of on their own, they're going like, what the heck am I supposed to do in this small town of 100 people? How do you make stuff happen out of that environment?
Yeah, like I think I'm going to answer this well. So, I mean, the first thing for me is really just because you got to have that why, right? You got to be committed. Things are going to get tough. They always do. There's going to be bad deals, but it's your why that's going to kind of keep you on track. So, if you're sitting there and you got that why, you got that drive, like that's step one. And I think once you have that, what worked really well for me was getting super disciplined with my time. And this is something that's just kept evolving even to this day, just getting more disciplined, more focused. Because there's a lot of time in the day, right? And if you're getting up at 4:35 in the a.m., which I highly recommend, doing your 9 to 5 day job, like there's more than ample enough time in the day to start your side hustle. And you don't just quit your main thing and go on your side hustle. You keep your main thing. You keep working at your side hustle, and eventually there'll be this, there'll just be this kind of fork in the road where it's like, you're going to feel terrified and you're just going to go towards your why. Right. And, we won't really go into mine, but, there was just being disciplined and having that why and that drive, every single day, hanging around people that doing what you're doing. Maybe it's not physically hanging around because you're stuck in a, small town, but you're still tuning in your brain, like you're tuning forks with podcasts and personal development. Right? Like that is key, because there's very few percentage of the population that are like, real estate investors and entrepreneurs.
Well, I like how you answered that question, right? Because you didn't say, oh yeah, like it's really difficult. You got to figure out a way in the small location. You focused on yourself and your actions. And you sort of, in what I'm taking away from it is maybe a little harder to get started where there's not as much opportunity. But if you are in a place like that and you stick with it and you focus and you say, I'm going to do this, then eventually you will. If I'm taking away, right, what you're saying.
Yeah, no, 100%. And yeah, like, I mean, it's virtual now too, right? We got the internet. You don't actually have to be buying necessarily properties in that town that you're in, but maybe once a month you're visiting another small town, but maybe it's a little bit bigger, and there's some deals to be, some deals to be had.
Well, I think the small town is interesting too, because you got a lot more, I don't know, the prices are a little lower, right? Easier barrier of entry too. So
yeah, and typically more cash flow, right?
Yeah. So let's talk about, you said most of your stuff is in Sudbury. And what, is there something about the Sudbury market, or was it just the proximity? I know you said it's not necessary to focus on a place that's close to you, but is there something about it that makes it unique or a good place to invest in?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I started investing in 2017, that was kind of when I did, the due diligence of the market. And I pretty confident it's like one of the only cities in Northern Ontario that's still growing in terms of population. One of the biggest things, usually how I explain Sudbury is, it started off 150 plus years ago as a mining town. And I don't even probably realize the true extent of this, but like we're like top 3-4 places in the entire world in terms of mineral density, like mining capital of Canada. So there is like so much mining and technologies related to that. It's absurd. And on top of that, we've in the last 5-10 years, there's been other growth like the CRA, the healthcares, multiple colleges, universities, even the main highways going up to Sudbury. All of that's getting widening to 4 lanes down to Perry Sound. So I think it's like the perfect hybrid market where you're getting cash flow and appreciation. And for me, I was a firm believer with my investment strategies that it needs the cash flow. Like I find just investing on appreciation alone is like pure speculating, right? So it's kind of that hybrid market where you're getting the best of both worlds. And yeah, as we've seen just with everywhere the price of COVID. The other thing I'll mention too, because this is super interesting, because I think right now talking to other investors, everyone thinks the market's just kind of gone down 20-30% like all of Canada. Which to some point it's true. But if you look at the purchase prices in Sudbury, let's say from like 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, that market actually hasn't shifted much. And the reason for it is because there's just a lot of buyers that can qualify for these properties, right? If you're making $70,000 of income, you could be buying these properties. So it is Sudbury because it works perfectly for the rent to own strategy. And as we expand in our rent to own business, we're looking for other markets that are similar to Sudbury because it's just the perfect market to do rent to owns with the purchase prices, and it also gives us the generational wealth for the multifamilies too, just because it has those fundamentals in the market.
Yeah, you can like the average. I don't have this stat offhand at all, but average income in Sudbury is probably pretty high compared to a lot of places, certainly compared to most other towns in Northern Ontario. And the home prices are certainly not Southern Ontario numbers, probably 50% of what maybe even less than 50% of what a Southern Ontario market would bring. So all these issues you see in Southern Ontario around affordability maybe is slightly there in Sudbury, but certainly not to the same extent, right? So you're making a family making 150K as a dual income family household can certainly qualify for those.
Yeah, definitely.
300, 400, even more than that homes. Whereas that's the biggest problem in a lot of Southern Ontario communities for people want to be homeowners is the numbers just don't work, right? And it's just really challenging to get into home ownership. So I agree, it makes perfect sense for a rent to own model. What do you need to run your business or to run any rent to own business? What do you need? What are the main team members or partners, or what are those main elements of that business?
Yeah, definitely. So I would recommend, like, you're definitely going to want to find a coach or someone that can walk you through the process. I think I would recommend really like that to any real estate investing strategy, because it's almost like you're getting a direct line. I don't personally coach it at all. Definitely don't have the time to do that. But the key players are definitely going to be your mortgage broker. You're going to need to have a mortgage broker who's familiar with rent to owns, knows how to qualify clients like on rent to owns, because I would say that's your key piece, right? Because if you're not qualifying the rent to own tenant buyers correctly, like to get into your program, they're not going to be able to get out of your program, right? They're going to be stuck in it or failed. After that, you're going to definitely want to build your legal team. So you're going to want to find a lawyer who has experience in rent to own. There's definitely a few out there that because there's quite a few contracts in the rent to own as well. I'm not going to get through those details, but the mortgage broker, the lawyer, definitely the two most. From there, I actually expanded into, really finding real estate agents, because, you want to have a real estate agent on your team that also understands the strategy, right? So, we got real estate agents on our team, credit counselors, like credit repair agents that can work with our tenant buyers. They're on the team as well. And then of course you're going to need investors.
Cool. Yeah, the mortgage broker certainly is a key one, right? Because your model is a tenant first rent to own model, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Can you explain the difference between that and a property first?
So a property first rent to own, typically they are much like more unsuccessful. And usually, typically, the reason for that is, you buy a property, you fix it, you put it up for a rent to own. Maybe the first or second month, like, you don't get many applications. And then, like, by the third or fourth month, like, you're really just to take anyone who applies for the rent to own, because you need to get someone in there, right? So that's usually why, like, the property first, you might not have the full screening. So on a tenant first, like, the reason why this strategy is by far the best is because you want them to be emotionally committed to the property. Okay. So if you're doing a tenant first rent to own, we still say we do a tenant first rent to own, we still show them properties that we own. But the kicker is they can pick any house that they want. It doesn't have to be our house. Okay. So we want them to be emotionally committed to the property, because they're picking it. They're the one going to be living there. And financially committed, because they're giving us the down payment, right? Their initial option consideration. So I find when you have those two, like the financial and the emotional commitment, they're the type of people that if something goes wrong, they're calling you the next day being like, don't sell the house. They have a very strong why, so that's kind of a little bit tidbit. We really focus on that. What's the tenant buyer's why, like why they want to become a homeowner, and then let them do the tenant first and pick their own house. So they're really committed.
Just a small point there. I was curious. Do you have your tenant buyers that you end up connecting with? Are they typically local, or are they coming from out of town, like from Southern Ontario or somewhere else?
Great question. I would say 70% are local, 30% are actually moving to Sudbury, which is also goes on your point of asking about the market, right? Like, Sudbury has jobs, which is like kind of the first step, right? When you have jobs and people are moving to your city. So, we can tell firsthand just by the rent, live, own, and how many rent to own, and how many people we've seen just moving to Sudbury on the rent to own programs, right? And
that's a huge number. That's a big percentage.
And these people that are moving, though, they need more guidance from your real estate agent, because they don't know the city,
sure,
right? So you need to have that player on the team so that they can help navigate the good areas, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So you mentioned.
Yeah,
you mentioned that you're providing good deals for other investors in the area via like the wholesale, offering them wholesale deals. What other ways are you working with investors?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So the other side of the rent to own model is, like we talked about the tenants, but the other side is actually the investor, right? So we work with investors who, just to back up, like one of the biggest learning lessons for me is getting into the real estate game. Like I thought it was going to be, like I said, passive income. quickly I realized that buying a rental property is like starting a business, literally starting a small business. And it's a lot of work. There's lots of different avenues. So I work with investors who want to own real estate, but not want to have the headaches, right? And from like, they can work on rent to own properties where, you have a tenant taking care of everything. And then you also have us, if you're looking at like an Oreo, like you have the tenant, you have the investor, we're kind of the cream filling in the middle that do all the work and hold everyone together, right? We also work with investors who, maybe they just want to be a private lender. Like I mentioned, we've closed on properties ourselves to fix and flip. And other investors we know and are reputable are doing the same thing. So we also help, investors that just want to loan money get involved that way too in Sudbury. With the investing, just one more point there, like with the rent to own investing, we do have some investors that, might not want to invest in Sudbury, and that's fine because we have projects in other areas of Canada. But typically we're looking at $200,000 to $600,000 in purchase prices for the rent to own. So, yeah,
you mentioned you started to venture a little bit outside of, or not a little bit, pretty far outside of Sudbury. How did that come to be? And yeah, was that just you come across a good tenant buyer that's qualified and it made sense and they want to move to wherever?
Yeah, great question. So I'm a firm believer of the mission first in a business, right? And our mission in Rent Live Own, pretty aggressive. We want to help 10,000 families become homeowners by 2030. And, when we have a family just reaching out to us, that's like no one else can help them. They're in Calgary. They just found us online. We don't even advertise there. We're not going to say no, right? So we would do whatever it took, right? Because that's one of our codes, and we help them out. And then the same thing somehow happened in Newfoundland and Nova Scotia. We've done some Muskoka area, Peterborough area. But yeah, at the end of the day, if we get the right client, again, tenant first, we're willing to go wherever, as long as the market makes sense, of course, right? As long as it's going to be set up for success, right?
Yeah, that's the real key to that. The rent-own strategies is finding the qualified tenant buyers that are, because then it, locations. I mean, once you have a bit of that model built out, you can find. Mortgage brokers can work anywhere across Canada, right? You can find a local realtor in any market. Like, there's obviously difference in quality, but you can find someone who can, be capable of putting a deal like this together. Yeah. The mortgage broker and the tenant buyer kind of are the big keys at the start, right? Because mortgage brokers can go anywhere. They need to be there to help and support the tenant through the process of buying it eventually. And then finding that good tenant buyer. That seems to be what most people struggle with. And if that's really the first piece, right? Find that person and then.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that it is the most challenging by far. For us, it's a numbers game. A lot of people want to do rent to owns, but very small percentage would actually be set up for success, right? So, we're getting like 2,000 people to our website just in Sudbury, a month, 500 applications. From those 500, we maybe buy 2 houses, right? So it's a lot of work, man. It's a lot of work for sure. But the best leads typically come from mortgage brokers and real estate agents, for sure. That's right. How we started I started the business. It was just networking with mortgage agents, real estate agents, trying to help more of their clients.
And have you seen an uptick in lead flow around this topic in the last 6 months, a year, just based on the market?
Yeah, in the last few months, we've seen an uptick for sure. Just more challenging to get mortgages, right? Like people just not being able to get approved for what they need. In which case, to be honest, most cases we still can't even help them. But the lenders are getting more strict, obviously, and they're finding other stuff. We just had one yesterday about they did another credit check, literally the day before closing, and the CMHC just pulled the financing. Yeah, wow. I didn't even know that was possible, but the banks are kind of doing that, and a lot of realtors just know us as the deal savers, and they just call us when the deal's falling apart and try to put it back together.
I like that. Tell us, you mentioned your meetup club. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So again, there is a meetup group in Sudbury, but it was more directed to landlords, and it's virtual and you're listening to paralegals. So when I first got to Sudbury, I definitely engaged in that group and it was great, but I wanted to create a more of an investor community where we can just, get value from some key speakers and just network. So that's what I ran with like really early on in 2018, pretty well monthly up until, and again, we're starting with like 3 people, 4 people, 5 people. And until COVID, like no word of a lie, our best event was like days before the pandemic like was announced. And we had like 35 people, and it was a panel. It was awesome. And then it all got shut down. So I wasn't a fan of virtual, to be honest. So we just kind of closed it down. And we've just now fired it back up. We just did an event last year in November, and we're planning on running events for 2023. And again, it's just, usually a monthly thing or every couple months. And, we got investors coming from North Bay and, I think even one from Barrie actually came up. So it's been good. And we've got a good round of speakers this year too. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Where would people go to learn about it?
So we do have a Facebook page, Sudbury Real Estate Investors Association.
Okay. And
we also have a meetup group at meetup.com. So if you type in Sudbury Real Estate Investing, like we're like kind of the first links there in Google. And or just email me directly, and I can definitely get you on the roster for 2023.
Perfect. That sounds great. We'll get more of your contact info right at the end of the show. Where do you see your business going in the future now? More the same, or?
Yeah, great question. So I got big plans and aspirations. So I mean, right now we're really just using Sudbury as a testing ground for our rent, live, own business model. There's lots of moving parts in the business, and we're really just trying to use Sudbury as that stomping ground to build this scalable business. And our goal is to take it across Canada into every city that we can, that makes sense from a investment standpoint. The multifamily portfolio in the Sudbury, like I mentioned, that's kind of on hold. But we are already in talks, and we were speaking with Sandy about this already. We were in talks with a lawyer. We want to continue to buy multifamily, so we're in talks with a lawyer to maybe not put together a REIT or a fund, but we're going to be putting together something to kind of get us started and acquire more bigger multis in Sudbury to start. And we're going to continue doing the wholesale model as well. Like my thoughts is again, just keeping it's simple and like laser focused to one area and just getting all the kinks out and then taking that model to a different city. I find that's kind of been the vision from kind of the vision that's pivoted. Because to be honest, I originally wanted to start and just go Canada wide, and quickly realized like, let's just get the systems dialed in, let's get them all dialed in Sudbury, and then we'll move to a different city.
But I like that because it's as expandable as you want it to be, and so that's great. Yeah.
And like at the end of the day, it's just a great market, and there's lots of opportunities. And I do find like just having all of like the wholesaling, the multifamily, the rent to own, the property management, like the contractors, all within like, driving distance, like 20, 30 minutes will be there. It's hard to go to a different city, right? Because it's like, we're just so confident in this one, just with the team.
Yeah, it's a city the size of Sudbury. How many people are in Sudbury? Is there
like about 1,000? Yeah, 160, 170.
Yeah, there's enough people in a market that size, which not everyone, most Canadians are within an hour of some sort of market like that. There's lots you can build up a massive portfolio of properties and opportunities and everything in that sort of market. You don't need to come to a Toronto.
Yeah, that's a thought we have every day, man. It's like, do we even need to leave? Maybe the rent to own could leave, right? Because that's like more, you can do that more virtually, but maybe the wholesales and the multifamilies just stick in Sudbury.
You could go pros and cons on that for a while, but there's something good about owning. Like, you can kind of really own your space really well if you focus on a market like that. You can really become, that player who just kind of owns everything, because it's really hard for people to break through. Someone who's got that sort of territory covered. And yeah, anyways, there's value in both models, but So yeah, Sudbury's got lots of opportunity there. I think it's a good enough market to do almost whatever you could possibly want, and so it's a great market. What's the best piece of advice or information, or a tip or a quote or something that you've heard that's really helped you along the way?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to try not to repeat myself because honestly, yeah, like my biggest one is definitely like, the why. I like to, when I do usually like investor presentations, I go into, the 3 pillars of investing with, our foundation and the strategy, right? The laser focused strategy and the exits, right? And I think those are all like super valuable pieces on its own, like having the right foundation, having the right team for the strategy that you want to implement, right? We talked about that today. Then being laser focused on the specific strategy you want to implement, because there was a time where it sounds like kind of probably chaotic for listeners, but there was a time where this was, I like by myself, I had a like flip on the go, multifamily conversion on the go, rent to own companies on the go. And I didn't have that laser focus, right? And everything didn't go as planned, right? It was just finding my attention was pulled in too many directions. Kind of like this call started off about simplicity and laser focus. So now the focus is like, now that I have business partners, they're able to have their laser focus. I have my laser focus, and it's like a true game changer. So when you're first starting out, you need to like, what is your laser focus investment strategy going to be? And literally say no to everything else. And as soon as you like write down your goal on that piece of paper, the universe is going to text you the next day and give you an opportunity that you're going to have to say no to. And,
yeah.
And us entrepreneurs, we're a yes man, right? Like we like to say yes. And that's kind of got myself into this and just owning all these different businesses. But, it ended up working out, just finding partners. Next thing would be your exits. So again, when I didn't mention this on the call, but I did a flip in 2018, lost tens of thousands of dollars. And it was strictly because, again, not having the laser focus, but not having the exit strategies, right? I only had a plan A, buy it and sell it. So, exit strategies are a huge component of what we do now, like massive. Every deal we enter in, it's like 4, 5, 6 exit strategies, right? And so that's kind of your triangle 3 pieces. But the actual thing in the middle, man, is the why. It's like why you're doing everything, why you're getting out of bed, and I can't stress that enough, right? Like it's there's going to be challenges and roadblocks in everything that you're doing. And I think you can really be successful in pretty well like any real estate investment strategy that you're doing, right? As long as you're focused on that and become the expert and can execute it. So, just build that why. And then from there, you'll be able to choose a strategy that aligns with your why, right? As opposing to choosing a strategy and then trying to make that support your why. So if you guys are following. So yeah, that would definitely be my pieces of advice.
Well, it's good because, there is plenty of shiny objects in real estate. And especially when you're first starting out, you hear about one, and then the next time you go back to your real estate club, you're going to hear about something else, and you're going to hear about something else. And it just goes on and on and on. So I really like that. And I think that is important too. Not to say that you can't be successful, like branching out, spreading out and whatever. But I think that there is a lot of power in focus for sure.
Definitely. And when you are starting out, like I think it is in some extent to say yes to a few different things so you can get your feet wet, with the understanding that like, you're going to have to contract at some point.
Yeah, totally agree.
Well, Zach, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. Thanks, Rob. So best way is actually probably by text message. They could text me at 705-562-9518 or email me directly at Zach, ZACH, at rentliveown.ca. That would be the best ways.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate you sharing all this stuff.
Yeah, Rob and Sandy, honestly, it's a pleasure. It's like a dream come true, to be honest. I know this probably sounds cheesy, but I'm listening for like 8 years. It's kind of cool.
Oh, you're the one person. 8 years. Nice.
Sandy, how can people get in touch with you?
Awesome. Yeah, no, this is great. Thanks, Zach. Get in touch with me. Actually, I'm changing it up again. I'm going back to an older email address. I'm transitioning there. So this is the first episode in a couple of years, probably or a year at least, that I've put out this email, which has always been going, but they can go back and start emailing me at sandy@mckayrealtynetwork.com. Or find me anywhere across the social media platforms and DM me that way.
Right on. And people, you know what? I'm just going to say that we're doing a lot of cool things around here. We're getting more into the development stuff and got a couple projects on the go right now. If anyone's interested in hearing about it, learning about it, and maybe even getting involved, just reach out and drop me an email, rob@mrbreakthrough.ca, and we'll talk.
Awesome.
And well, that's it, I guess. Another one under the belt.
There you go. Great show. Great start to 2023. And thanks again.
Yeah, we're going to keep doing these. We're going to stay focused on doing that. That's the takeaway from today. Stay focused, guys. See you next time.